The Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Lindiwe Maseko, representing the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Michael Masuta, MP, the Honorable Deputy Minister, John Jeffrey, the Honorable Maripuani Motapo, Your Royal Highness, also serving in the capacity of Acting Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee for Justice and Correctional Services, colleagues in the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, Judges President and Deputy Judges President present, all other judicial colleagues, including regional court presidents, chief magistrates, and senior magistrates present. I take this opportunity to acknowledge my spiritual parents, Pastor and Pastor Mrs. Ibitayo and Pastor Kerele, and my wife, of course, without whom I would have crumbled down a long time ago. Members of the Judicial Service Commission, members of Council of the South African Judicial Education Institute, and its Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Homolemo Mosheu, members of the Legal Fraternity, the Secretary General of the Office of the Chief Justice, Ms. Mmesi Josengwe, and all officials present today, Advocate Mr. Vusima Donsela, the Director General of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and other senior officials in that department, members of the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee, and officials of all other stakeholder departments, representatives of other state institutions, including the former Acting Secretary General of the Office of the Chief Justice, now the Secretary of the State Capture Commission, Dr. Kotso Divier, members of the media, everyone present here, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you. Today, Friday, the 23rd of November 2018, marks a turning point in the history of the South African judiciary and, by extension, in the history of South Africa as a whole. A turning point indeed, because never before has the judiciary of this country assumed the responsibility to account for the execution of its constitutional mandate without, in quotes, a middleman in the true sense of the word. And here lies the significance of this development in its proper context. Our constitutional democracy comprises three co-equal and functionally independent arms of the state, namely the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Co-equal indeed, because none of these arms is an imposter, undeserving of equal and constitutionally assigned status as the real arm of the state. The somewhat conservative, reserved, less dramatic, public space shy nature, posture, or disposition of judicial office bearers has had the inevitable consequence of rendering the judiciary less visible, which inadvertently relegated them to a level far below that of its political counterparts among the arms of the state. The acute underfunding, comparatively less public regard in which they are held, and the fact or their apparent resignation to the assumption of the parental role by the Ministry of Justice inadvertently, yet inevitably, undermined or weakened the role and status of the judiciary as the real arm of the state even more. This situation was exacerbated by some of the additional factors to be touched on in the course of this address. At long last, like the executive, whose performance is accounted for primarily by the President, and Parliament, whose activities are reported on mainly by the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, we hold this first judicial accountability session so that the Chief Justice may account for the performance and other activities of the broader judiciary of South Africa to the people of South Africa. We do so not only in recognition of our unique role as an independent arm of the state, but also because of our conviction that with independence comes accountability. We are not self-employed. Like functionaries in the other arms of the state, we are employed by the people, and as their messengers, we owe them an account of how we have exercised the mandate they charged us with and the resources they have availed to us. This has been the first of its kind in this country. Whatever teething problems we may encounter would be addressed for sure in due course so that the next session next year would be handled even better than this one. We will, after this address, take a few questions before we adjourn and then break for a much longer engagement with the media if there is an appetite for it. There, we will be available until the media runs out of questions to put to us. Section 165(6) of the Constitution and the Superior Courts Act require of the Chief Justice and the leadership of the judiciary to craft norms and standards. This we did, and the norms and standards have been operational since the 28th of February 2013. They set a high standard towards which we will all have to work progressively until we attain it. But a misunderstanding of the purpose of the norms and standards has led some to think that if a judicial officer fails to deliver a judgment within 3 months of the trial or hearing being finalized, then disciplinary steps must immediately be taken against the defaulting judge or magistrate. These time frames are meant to alert each judge or magistrate affected and the head of court of the need to begin to work more earnestly, to have the judgment delivered sooner rather than later, and to be specific about the date for the hand-down of the judgment. They are designed to constitute, I beg your pardon, a red bright light that would help us avert the difficult situation of being left with no choice but to have a judge or magistrate hauled before a disciplinary structure. Whether a judicial officer must be subjected to a disciplinary process is a decision that is governed by the provisions of the Judicial Code of Conduct, but not the norms and standards. That decision cannot be based, I repeat, by what the norms and standards provide for. In broad terms, the higher courts have performed as set out below. The Judiciary Annual Report is a reflection, as the Judge President indicated, of where we are now as the judiciary and how we are doing in our endeavors to fulfill our constitutional obligation to improve access to justice and deliver quality justice speedily to all the people of this country. The report is thus aimed at enhancing transparency, accountability in the expeditious delivery of justice, and public confidence in the judiciary. The confidence of the public in an independent judiciary is of paramount importance for a vibrant and functional democracy to become a reality. Lack of public confidence in the judiciary has the potential of eroding the moral authority of the judiciary. As you all know, we neither control the army, the police, nor the public purse. Our orders as the court are obeyed only because of the public confidence we enjoy, generated by our moral authority. If we lose public confidence, then we are finished. Accountability is therefore important because it is a foundational value of our democratic order, and it is applicable to all arms of state, including the judiciary. The promulgation of the norms and standards for all judicial officers is one of the milestones that seek to promote court excellence and enhance judicial accountability. It is worth repeating that they seek to achieve the enhancement of access to quality justice for all, to affirm the dignity of all court users, and ensure the effective, efficient, and expeditious adjudication and resolution of disputes through the courts. These noble aspirations or objectives can only be attained through the commitment and cooperation of all judicial officers in keeping with our oath or solemn affirmation to uphold and protect the Constitution and the human rights in it, and to deliver justice to all persons alike without fear, favor, or prejudice, in accordance with the Constitution and the law. These norms and standards are underpinned by the core values of judicial independence and accountability, accessibility, transparency, responsiveness, collegiality, and diligence, among others. Maybe I should pause here and say, judicial independence is indispensable, and adherence to the oath of office is just as critical, and this is why. Judicial officers must never seek to be celebrities. They must never be populist in their approach to the issues. Because if they are tempted to be, then what is going to happen is injustice masquerading as justice. People will just be checking what is in the media, what do the analysts say, what is the popular view on social media, and then position themselves to decide in a manner that will enjoy public approval regardless of what the Constitution and the law demands of them. And that would be corrupting justice. Because what will happen is those who come from the village like me, who don't tweet, who are not on Facebook, who do not have connections to those who command the means of communication, will always lose cases before the courts, because judges and magistrates would be turning their backs to the fundamentals of administering justice and seeking to receive an applaud from the dominant public voices out there. We dare not betray our mandate for the sake of some pseudo-political correctness. We saw the need to identify challenges that undermine the efficiency and effectiveness of the court system. As a result, a governance structure was established to ensure that the process of identifying those areas that impact negatively on the delivery of justice is driven by the judiciary. This includes performance monitoring, information and communication technology at the courts, library services, case law management, court infrastructure, and security. For example, to allow for the proper management of judicial functions, the judiciary itself has assumed the responsibility of monitoring the court performance. Indicators were developed and ambitious targets were set. This report is the result of that process. The information obtained from the court performance statistics allows the leadership of the judiciary to interrogate issues relating to broader judicial functions more efficiently, as well as those relating to access to justice. It is important to note that the leadership of the magistracy has also started this process in order to identify indicators and targets for court performance information for the magistrates' courts. That information will in future also be reported on and form part of the composite annual report, so that the single judiciary that we are of this country accounts for its performance collectively. From the court performance statistics contained in the report, it is clear that the bulk of the work performed by the Superior Court is done by the High Court and the specialist courts. And of the 152,944 civil cases received by the High Court, 106,936 were finalized, and of the 15,293 criminal matters, 10,411 were finalized. This despite the limited resources and a judicial establishment which has remained unchanged despite an increase in the workload and responsibilities of the courts. The Supreme Court of Appeal has performed very well, and 223 appeals of the 235 were finalized during the period of reporting. This is above the 1,104 applications for leave to appeal out of 1,487 applications which were finalized. Our specialist courts have also ensured that matters are expeditiously finalized. The labor and the labor appeal courts have finalized 287 of the 427 labor matters brought before them. The Land Claims Court, although situated in Randburg, is a court which has dedicated itself to bringing justice to the people. It regularly holds court sessions where needed around the country, more especially in the remote rural areas where sensitive historical issues relating to land are predominant. The court has finalized 227 of the 330 matters brought before it during the reporting period. The challenges experienced by the judiciary have been exacerbated by the ever-increasing workload. The 17th constitutional amendment increased the jurisdiction of the Constitutional Court. As you probably are aware, over and above entertaining constitutional matters, the Constitutional Court also has jurisdiction over other matters of general public importance that deserve its attention. And the court is now the highest court in the Republic and is a court of final appeal on all matters. This amendment has resulted in a marked increase in the workload of the court, as I said. More importantly, it is the only court where all its available judges are required to sit together, and this contributes to the delays it is now experiencing in finalizing cases. Every case demands the attention of all 11 or all available judges. Some judges were even beginning to wonder whether the time has perhaps not come for judges to sit in panels like the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Federal Constitutional Court of Germany. But as presently advised, we believe that it's a bit too early to venture in that direction. The total caseload of this court, as at the time of this report, was recorded as 437, of which 295 cases were finalized, and this translates to 68%. The number of reserved judgments in the Superior Court is monitored to measure compliance with the set norms and standards and the Judicial Code of Conduct. The report on reserved judgment is also a tool for judges, president, and all heads of court to manage the judicial functions at a particular court. The heads of court, as part of accountability and in an effort to be transparent, have taken a decision that a reserved judgment report containing a list of those judgments outstanding for 6 months or longer will be placed on the OCJ website. Any request for further information, such as information relating to the list of reserved judgment for an individual judge or judgment outstanding for less than 6 months, would have to be directed to the head of the court concerned. In order to ensure that the courts remain efficient, the judiciary will be introducing win-win court annexed mediation. In July this year, judicial officers from all courts, including the Chief Justice, were trained on the practical implementation and benefits of court annexed mediation as part of the broader judicial case flow management strategy. This training was led by Judge John Clifford Wallace, a senior judge and Chief Judge Emeritus of the Ninth Circuit in the United States of America Court of Appeal. Judge Wallace is internationally renowned as one of the leading authorities on judicial case management and court annexed mediation. A pilot project will be started in due course in the jurisdictions under Mlambo JP before proper mediation is rolled out to the entire court system where it does not already exist. Access to justice to all South Africans remains one of our top priorities, hence the establishment of the National Judicial Efficiency Enhancement Committee, already referred to, and its provincial equivalents. This structure exists in order to promote interdepartmental cooperation and stakeholder relations aimed at enhancing efficiency in the broader justice system, the improved performance of all courts, and access to quality justice for all. One of the main challenges of the courts is that they handle a lot of hard copies throughout the court processes, including dockets, case files, and judgments. The judiciary would like to implement electronic filing system to manage, secure, and ensure sharing of records in order to improve efficiency and the quality of service to the public. Digitization, or as the Chinese call it, automatization, is critical in managing and securing all records linked to a case. The envisaged benefits include improved accessibility of documents by litigants, other stakeholders, and members of the public in general, the reduction of paper storage and records management challenges for the courts, improved response time based on the documents provided to the courts by third parties, improved case handling processes within the courts, improved adherence to standards across all courts with regard to indexing and document accessibility, better security of documents as well. I'm delighted to announce that plans to pilot an e-filing system at the Superior Courts within the next 6 months are at an advanced stage, and we will forever be indebted to Judge President Mlambo, who is a guru in this area, for having assumed the responsibility to lead this project on our behalf. It is worth noting that despite the serious budgetary constraints within which the judiciary has to operate and the country's economic challenges, the judiciary has made great strides in the pursuit of the efficient and effective delivery of justice for the benefit of the South African public. One of the mechanisms for fostering accountability and promoting transformation is continuous education and training of judges and magistrates, as well as the training of aspirant judicial officers and those that have been newly appointed. And in this regard, SAJE has done exceedingly well. During the period under review, SAJE trained 1,882 judicial officers through 90 judicial education programs. It also appointed 5 permanent judicial educators as facilitators to provide dedicated judicial training, and I pause to express my gratitude to Minister Masuta for having acted with deliberate speed to ensure that this process becomes a reality. There is additional. Those facilitators or educators are additional to judges and magistrates who have over the years been volunteering their services as facilitators. The Judicial Service Commission, as you know, is tasked with the mammoth task of ensuring that our judiciary reflects broadly the racial and gender composition of South Africa when making recommendations for judicial appointments. The JSC continues to make great progress of accelerating the transformation of the judiciary and recommending those people who are fit and proper for appointment to judicial office as required by our Constitution. Despite these progressive strides, more still needs to be done to transform the judiciary that is properly reflective of our racial and gender diversity. As at the end of the period under review, 184 judges were black and 90 were women, out of a total of 250 judges on the Superior Court establishment. And I need say nothing about the magistracy, because there you'll find the type of transformation that we as judges are aspiring towards. We aim to meet the high standard we have set ourselves at some point in the future to address some of the challenges that frustrate our noble endeavors to make excellent performance a norm. We have embarked on the following additional measures. 1, judicial officers do not always have to write scholarly and reportable judgments. The norm ought to be the delivery of short yet complete judgments immediately after the trial or hearing, unless the complexity or length of the matter requires otherwise. 2, only trial or hearing ready matters must be set down. To achieve this, judicial case management and pre-trial conferences that are driven by judicial officers must be fully embraced, and the first phase, I may say, of this program has already been implemented. 3, returning to the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee and its provincial equivalents, they were, as you already know, set up to really enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the broader justice system. All the key role players in the justice system come together, and the Chief Justice chairs the meeting, whereas the judges president do likewise in relation to the provincial structures. There, challenges to efficiency are identified and solutions are proposed for each by the collective that meets. 4, another mechanism employed to reduce the costs of litigation and to accelerate the pace of litigation was a resolution by the heads of court to have only English as a language of record. What this means is that every litigant is free to testify or even argue in a language of preference, but the record of proceedings is itself required to be in English. Recent experience has borne out the wisdom behind this resolution, and it happened here at the Constitutional Court. I give no further details unless otherwise pressed. Number 5, the ability to access tools of trade in the form of reports, law reports, and other library materials has been seriously hampered by the fact that this function is yet to be transferred from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to the Office of the Chief Justice. I say no more than that this is a matter that clearly cries out for urgent collaborative effort to ensure that the transfer happens. Number 6, court judgments are produced by judges as functionaries of the state. The state or the judiciary should own copyright over these judgments. Yet, they are availed to publishers for free, who, with the editorial services provided by judges and advocates, then package them and sell them back to the state for the consumption of the judiciary. The judiciary buys back its judgments at no discount whatsoever. As the judiciary, we have for years been asking for funding from those who control the library services budget to have us compile our own judgment so that we may access them at no cost whatsoever. It is very difficult to secure the requisite funding to implement this cost-saving measure, which countries like Ghana, Qatar, and Singapore have implemented to the great benefit of their judiciaries. Number 7, Gauteng is one of the divisions that have a much lower number of judges in comparison to the workload they have to contend with. This contributes to the delays in enrolling and finalizing matters, notwithstanding the judge presidents and colleagues there's best endeavors to speed up the finalization of cases. Number 8, at NEEC level, we have appealed to SABC to consider arrest and detention only when it is essential or unavoidable to do so. This would reduce the workload of magistrates and free them from the remand court to do trials and applications that are trial ready, thus speeding up the overall finalization of cases. The about 665 unfilled vacant posts for prosecutors, which was reported to us at the recent meeting of the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee, will certainly weaken court performance even more. Difficult as it is, we plead for more funding for the NPA so that these posts can be filled and the criminal justice system can be strengthened and rendered more effective. Number 10, we also plead for the strengthening of the investigative capacities of our detective services, but at the same time offer a word of appreciation and encouragement to SABC for the enhanced police visibility where it is already happening, and express the wish to see it more widespread, resources permitting. Number 11, more funding is required for repairs or renovation of the buildings that courts occupy. Courts are virtually unsecure. People with batons are the ones offering protections to courts. Move around this very court, the highest court in the land. The security people are people who have batons and they don't even know how to use them. Sadly, the judiciary is unable to do anything about the matter but to raise it as a concern over and over and over again. Number 12, the Road Accident Fund must have its capacities more enhanced so that matters that are capable of speedy resolution do not have to wait for the last hour to be settled. This would also save huge costs from the budget of the Road Accident Fund. Number 13, more vigilance is required in relation to the amount at which the road accident funds and medical negligence claims are allowed to be settled. Number 14, it bears emphasis that the judiciary is acutely underfunded in comparison to other arms of the state. We cannot even afford the annual judicial colloquium, which other jurisdictions around the world hold without fail. Number 15, a stress management program is needed urgently for all judicial officers. They go through so much as a result of some of the traumatizing cases, like gruesome rape cases, murder, and very difficult divorce matters that affect young children or the custody of the young children and their well-being that they have to handle from time to time. It cannot be left to an individual judicial officer to fend for herself or himself. It is a work-related challenge that requires an institutional response, as was most impressively done by our colleagues in Australia and Singapore. Number 16, at some point, and however long it may take, institutional independence of the courts would have to be appropriately resolved. We will never tire, regardless of how many times our proposals are rejected, to say, like any progressive constitutional democracy, we deserve to have an administrative organ that is independent of the executive. I now turn to conclude by touching on leadership issues. It is necessary to sketch the scenario relating to the role of leaders of the arms of the state. Our president and members of the executive have never sought to discharge their duties only or predominantly within the confines of their offices or seat of the arm of the executive arm of the state they had. Similarly, leaders of parliament have never seen it as a requirement for the proper execution of their mandate to spend most of their time in their offices or their stations. As a result, apart from having a deputy, at any given time there are at least 3 cabinet ministers already sworn in and ready to assume presidential responsibilities in the absence of the president and the deputy president. for whatever reason, might occasion their absence or inability to discharge the responsibilities of that supreme office. And additional to their domestic responsibilities, they also have an obligation to help resolve continental and global challenges. Examples are the Lesotho, Sudan, DRC, and Somalia challenges. They rightly even deploy soldiers and financial resources there because we belong to the family of nations. What troubles any African country and what troubles any country in the world ought to be and is perceived by our executive as its own concern, and rightly so. Additional to the deputies, there are at least, or I beg your pardon, Parliament has not been left out. Additional to the deputies, there are at least 3 House chairs to do that which would have been done by either the Speaker or the Chair or the Deputy of a particular House had they been present. The Judiciary is no exception. There is an incredible demand or hunger for the intervention of the leaders of the Judiciary of South Africa, locally, continentally, and globally. I pause here to say we are privileged as the Judiciary of South Africa to enjoy the kind of independence that we do and to have made the kind of progress that we've been able to record. And we dare not be selfish because we are part and parcel of the broader family of nations. Wherever judicial independence is challenged, we are duty-bound as a contribution to strengthening judicial education, I beg your pardon, independence and accountability, constitutionalism, the rule of law, and entrenching democracy, to step in and offer whatever experience and wisdom our privileged position has enabled us to gather. We dare not be selfish. J.P. Mlambo, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but I must say this. Judge President Mlambo has made us proud many times over as the judiciary and as a nation. Most of the time he's not in court, and for a very good reason. Now the United Nations has a protocol on legal aid because of the critical leadership role that Mlambo JP has played to facilitate state-sponsored legal representation for the indigent in countries that did not have such a system in place before. He used his experience and wisdom drawn from his chairpersonship of Legal Aid South Africa and chose not to be selfish with his knowledge, but share that which others were crying out for with the rest of the global community. Hence the protocol that never existed before that we now have. He has played and continues to play a crucial role in championing the cause of immigrants and refugees and to promote access to justice through the medium of community-based justice centers globally. I encourage him to keep on absenting himself as and when the global community needs his essential intervention. I will never discourage him from helping others out there who need to benefit from his experience and wisdom. My own leadership role is multidimensional. Any notion that the Chief Justice of South Africa is somehow constitutional court bound can only be a consequence of a woeful lack of understanding in relation to the responsibilities that come with that office. To start off with, responsibilities are not confined to the operations of the Constitutional Court. As demanded even by Section 165(6) of the Constitution, and the Superior Courts Act. The Chief Justice must ensure that all courts in South Africa serve the nation well. Additional administrative responsibilities extend to overseeing our administrative department, the Office of the Chief Justice, which incidentally has received a clean audit because of how it stands guided by the collective leadership of the judiciary. The South African Judicial Education Institute, the National Efficiency Enhancement Committee, the Judicial Service Commission, and my other responsibilities as Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal also demand that I go out and share myself with the people. And I may add, from time to time, people in this country, even when this court is sitting, call upon me and say, sir, we need hope. Farmers call me, thousands of farmers. Business people call me. Community people call upon me and say, please come and encourage us. We've seen you encourage others, and it would be remiss of me to fail to respond just because others have taken it upon themselves to seek to prescribe my job description as if I'm ignorant of it. Additionally, I have since 2013 or 2014, I did not check, been serving in the office of Vice President of the Conference of Constitutional Jurisdictions of Africa, for short known as CCJA. On the 26th of April 2017, I assumed the presidency of the CCJA. Since not all apex courts in Africa had joined this continental body, I had to encourage the remaining jurisdictions to take up membership of the CCJA, and happily, at least 13 new members have since been enlisted through these efforts. I have to interact with member jurisdictions and attend some of their programs as individual jurisdictions, but also other continental gatherings, and represent Africa whenever other continental bodies and world bodies of judges meet. And through our visible contributions, we have for the first time in the history of the CCJA, let me put it that way, I was trying to be humble. For the first time in the history of the African continent, I was invited in my capacity as the president of the CCJA to attend the summit of the heads of state in Addis Ababa. And there I was able to champion the cause of African jurisdictions. And additionally, 43 of us gathered in Egypt. I was privileged to present on behalf of the Chief Justices present to the President of Egypt, causing him to realize the need for the judiciary to assume its rightful place continentally or globally in this manner. I said to him, Your Excellency, there is a continental structure that represents the legislature. And you, members of the executive, gather from time to time under the auspices of the African Union. It is about time that you recognize the role of the judiciary at a continental level as well. He said, next year, all things going well, Egypt will be assuming the leadership of the African Union. Just prepare me a memo, I will run with it. Those are the responsibilities. Those are the responsibilities that we absent ourselves from court sittings so that we can discharge for the greater good of humanity. Let me end by saying, I had to intervene in my capacity as president of the CCJA when untold attacks were leveled against my Supreme Court colleagues in Kenya. I never knew what the word for a crook was in Swahili until the president of that nation allegedly addressed my colleagues, including the Chief Justice, as Wakora, which means a crook. So I had to intervene, write a letter, cause it to be circulated to the media in Kenya, and the amount of appreciation, not only by the Kenyan judiciary, but the world body that I happened to be chairing at that time in Lithuania in particular, expressed amazing and humbling appreciation for our bold intervention. As a result, during the course of August, I think it was, I stand to be corrected, when my colleague Chief Justice Maraga called upon me to come and address the body of judges in Kenya because they were having their colloquium, I said I can't. I gave him my schedule, which stretches to next year. I said, CJ, look, I can't. He backed, and I remembered what they have just been through. I also remembered that they are one of the few judiciaries, if not the only one, who had to be interviewed anew as a result of serious allegations of corruption. I saw it as my responsibility as their president to intervene. There was a court sitting, but I had to. Duty called there as well. I encouraged them. They televised my address in almost all the television stations there, and even members of the executive appreciated my contribution in the pursuit of proper democracy in the nation of Kenya. I round up by saying the Chief Justiceship, the presidency of the CCJA, and the chairpersonship of the World Council of Constitutional Justice from 26 April 2017 until the end of February 2018 demand that I represent South Africa, Africa, and the world body during the term of my chairpersonship of the WCCJ by attending almost all the meetings of the Executive Bureau of the Continental and World Body, and I continue to serve as a member of the Executive Bureau of the World Body now, and other members of the CCJA as they bring colleagues together to discuss matters of importance to the judiciary. Let me round this point up as follows. Whenever you feel inclined to interrogate my performance as an individual and the performance of the leaders of the judiciary, remember, we have two arms of the state to be compared to. If you are inclined to reflect on how much we spend on any item, compare our budget, our responsibilities to the budget and responsibilities of the other arms of the state. Don't just single us out for scrutiny because you'll miss it. Finally, I have the singular honor and pleasure to say this is the annual report that reflects the performance of the judiciary during this period up to now, and it will be made available. I've signed, I think, about 400 copies so that as and when those in attendance require them, they would have easy access to them and reflect from home. And if you have questions or queries, we will be just too happy to deal with them. I think we have come to the end. I thank you for listening. There would be a question from you, members of the media, as I said, if they still have the appetite for putting questions to you. Thank you so much.